Audio Jungle.
Welcome to a deep dive into the world of cosmic mysteries and unsettling whispers. We're talking about a place shrouded in secrecy, high in the mountains of Ladakh Observatory X. You've given us a fascinating mix, a chapter from a new sci-fi book, Observatory X, plus some background articles on the real-world observatory in Ladakh. The question is, how much of the fiction is inspired by fact? And what secrets does this observatory really hold? Okay, let's unpack this opening chapter. It drops us right into the action. A lone scientist, a strange signal, and something called the anomaly. I love how the author uses sensory details, the silence, the dim red lights, even the metallic scent of the observatory. It immediately sets this eerie, almost suspenseful tone.
It's a clever move by the author. You're dropped into this environment that's both familiar, a scientific setting, but also unsettling. You know, the sensory details almost make you feel the isolation and tension Dr. Orson must be experiencing.
And then there's the mention of Ladakh itself, the region where this observatory is located. The author makes point of saying it was chosen for its clear skies, far from any city lights. Why is that so crucial for an observatory?
Well, think of it like this. You're trying to stargaze in the middle of Times Square. You're not going to see much beyond the flashing billboards, right? Light pollution from cities makes it incredibly difficult to observe faint objects in space. That's where Ladakh comes in. Its high altitude and remote location offer pristine skies perfect for telescopes to peer deep into the cosmos. And just like in the book, the real observatory in Ladakh has a bit of a reputation for, well, let's just say unexplained occurrences. There have been reports of equipment malfunctions, strange readings, and even staff experiencing disorientation. Some even link it to the region's unusual electromagnetic properties.
Now that is where things start to get really interesting. This blend of real-world science and fictional mystery. It makes you wonder what the author is drawing from. Speaking of drawing from reality, let's talk about Dr. Orson, our main character. He's an astrophysicist drawn to the solitude of Observatory X, the kind of guy more at ease with equations than people. But even HE seems unsettled by what's happening around him.
He's a classic reluctant hero, brilliant in his field, but maybe not quite prepared for the strangeness he encounters. Remember that feeling you get when you're drawn to something mysterious, even if it makes you a bit uneasy? It's like an itch you have to scratch, even if you're not sure what you'll find.
And in this case, what Dr. Orson finds is something called the anomaly, this distortion in space that feels almost alive. I mean, it's pure sci-fi thriller material.
What's fascinating is how the author takes something as abstract as a distortion in space and makes it feel tangible, almost threatening. It plays on our innate curiosity about the universe while tapping into a primal fear of the unknown. It reminds me of those late-night conversations about wormholes, theoretical tunnels through space-time that could connect different parts of the universe. Some physicists even speculate that advanced civilizations might be able to manipulate these wormholes for travel or communication.
So we're talking about the possibility of aliens being involved. That definitely takes this deep dive to another level.
Well, let's not jump to conclusions just yet, but the author is definitely playing with some big ideas here. Blending real-world scientific concepts with speculative fiction. It's a great way to make us think about the possibilities both within and beyond our current understanding of the universe.
Okay, so we've got this isolated observatory in a region known for strange occurrences, a protagonist drawn to the unknown, and now the possibility of wormholes and perhaps even aliens. This is shaping up to be quite the story. But you mentioned those unexplained events at the real observatory. Could there be a connection?
That's where things get really intriguing. The source material you provided highlights equipment malfunctions, strange readings, and staff experiencing disorientation at the real observatory. Could these be caused by natural phenomena we haven't fully grasped yet, or is there something more, shall we say, anomalous at play?
Okay, now I'm getting goosebumps for real. It's like the line between the book and reality is starting to blur. The author describes Dr. Orson hearing strange buzzing sounds, flickering lights, all those classic creepy details. And then during dinner at the base camp, there's a sudden scream from the resting place. Chilling stuff.
The author is definitely playing with psychological suspense here. Think about the setting. You're in this remote location, high in the mountains, surrounded by this vast emptiness. The isolation, the limited human contact, it can really mess with your mind, making you question what's real and what's imagined. But let's not forget, the real observatory has its own set of unexplained events. One source even mentions an event in the late 1980s where the telescope's alignment started declining and data analysis started yielding unusual results. pretty spooky considering this was a real problem they faced.
That definitely adds another layer to this. It's like the author is taking these real-world mysteries and weaving them into the fictional narrative. And the chapter ends with Dr. Orson asking, "What have I gotten myself into?"
Wow.
Which is exactly what we're thinking.
It's a great cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
That leaves us wanting more, needing to know what happens next. But it also prompts a bigger question. What's really going on at Observatory X, both in the book and in reality? Are these just isolated incidents, or is there something more connecting them? It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, you know? We have these strange events, this unsettling atmosphere, and a protagonist who's clearly in over his head.
Now, let's not forget those little details the author keeps dropping. Like that weird symbol Dr. Orson sees on the wall at the base camp. It's like a breadcrumb trail leading us deeper into the mystery.
Exactly. Is it a red herring meant to distract us? Or is it a genuine clue, maybe connected to the real-world observatory and those unexplained electromagnetic anomalies? Remember, some researchers believe those anomalies could be the key to understanding what's happening at Observatory X.
So we're talking about some kind of natural phenomenon that might be messing with the equipment and affecting the people there. Or could it be something else? Something a bit more out there.
The beauty of this deep dive is that we're exploring all possibilities. We're looking at the science, the mysteries, and even those fringe theories that make you wonder if there's more to the universe than we currently understand.
I have to admit, the author does a great job of creating this sense of unease. Even Dr. Orson, who seems perfectly content in his own company, is starting to feel the pressure. It's like the very atmosphere of Observatory X is getting to him.
You hit the nail on the head there. It's the power of place, the high altitude, the extreme temperatures, the sheer vastness of the landscape. It all creates this sense of otherworldliness, of being somewhere beyond the familiar. It's no wonder Dr. Orson is feeling rattled.
And then there's the staff. They're like a Greek chorus of creepiness, whispering about strange occurrences and avoiding eye contact. It's like they know something they're not telling.
Their behavior definitely raises red flags.
Yeah.
It's almost as if they've been warned not to talk about certain things, or maybe they're afraid of what might happen if they do.
Speaking of secrets and warnings, the source material mentions that the government tightened restrictions on the observatory after those strange events in the 1980s. Why would they do that?
Well, you could argue it's a matter of national security. If they believe there's a potential threat, they might want to control the flow of information. But it also makes you wonder if there's something they're not telling us. Are they trying to cover up evidence of something they don't want the public to know about?
Okay, now we're venturing into conspiracy theory territory.
Mm-hmm.
But it does make you think, especially when you consider those whispers of electromagnetic anomalies. Could those be the reason for the government's interest in Observatory X?
It's certainly a possibility. Electromagnetic fields can have some pretty strange effects on technology and even human biology. Maybe the government is studying those effects, or perhaps they're concerned about the potential dangers.
So we've got this remote observatory, unexplained events, a secretive government, and maybe even some kind of extraterrestrial phenomena. This deep dive is getting more complex by the minute.
And we haven't even talked about that blood-curdling scream, that moment when Dr. Orson hears a woman's cry from the resting place. It's a classic horror movie trope, but it's incredibly effective in this context. It makes you wonder what horrors this place holds.
I know. I got chills just reading that part. And what's even more unsettling is that no one else seems to react. It's as if they've become desensitized to the strangeness of Observatory X.
That's a great observation. It suggests that the scream is not an isolated incident, that perhaps it's something the staff has heard before. Maybe they've learned to ignore it, or maybe they're afraid to acknowledge it, knowing that it could mean something truly terrifying.
Okay, I need to take a deep breath. This is all getting a bit too spooky for me. Let's shift gears for a moment and go back to the science. The author mentions that the observatory houses the most sophisticated infrared radio telescope ever constructed. Could you tell us a bit about how those work?
Sure. Infrared telescopes, unlike the ones we typically see, are designed to detect infrared radiation. This is a type of light that's invisible to the human eye, and it's particularly useful for studying objects that are very cold or obscured by dust. Think about newly forming stars or distant galaxies. They emit a lot of infrared radiation.
So it's like a superpowered telescope that allows us to see things that would normally be hidden from view. That's pretty cool. But why build such a sophisticated telescope in a remote and challenging location like Ladakh?
Well, remember what we talked about earlier? Light pollution? It's not just visible light that interferes with astronomical observations. Earth's atmosphere absorbs a lot of infrared radiation too. So to get the clearest view, you need to place these telescopes at high altitudes where the air is thinner and drier.
Ah, that makes sense. Ladakh, with its high altitude and clear skies, is like the perfect spot for an infrared observatory.
Exactly, and that's why it's such a prime location for studying the cosmos. But as we're seeing, it also makes it a breeding ground for mystery and speculation. When you're peering deep into the universe, you never know what you might find.
And in the case of Observatory X, it seems like they've stumbled upon something else. Something beyond just distant stars and galaxies. Something that defies explanation.
Right, and that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We're not just exploring a fictional story, we're grappling with real-world mysteries and the limits of our scientific understanding.
Well, based on the source material, it seems like Observatory X's discoveries might be more unsettling than anyone bargained for. But that's a conversation for the next part of our deep dive. So we left off with Observatory X seemingly on the verge of some major discovery or disaster. Maybe both. But before we dive into the what-ifs, let's talk about Dr. Orson. He's the heart of this story, and honestly, I'm worried about the guy.
I don't blame you. He went from stargazing in solitude to dodging cosmic horrors in what feels like a heartbeat. That kind of pressure can change a person.
Absolutely. And the author really highlights that transformation throughout the book. Dr. Orson becomes more withdrawn, suspicious even.
Yeah.
And there's this one scene where he catches a glimpse of himself in the mirror and doesn't recognize the haunted look in his own eyes.
Wow, that's a powerful image. It speaks to the idea that the observatory itself is somehow affecting him, chipping away at his sense of self.
Right. It's like the mysteries of Observatory X are becoming a part of him, whether he likes it or not. Speaking of mysteries, the author drops some pretty big hints about the anomaly being more than just a scientific phenomenon.
Yeah, there are passages where Dr. Orson describes feeling like he's being watched or studied by the anomaly, and he starts having these vivid dreams filled with strange symbols and whispers. It's like it's trying to communicate with him.
Okay, now you're giving me goosebumps.
Mm.
And it ties back to what we were discussing earlier about those unexplained events at the real observatory. Could those be signs of the anomaly trying to reach out, or maybe even manipulate the people there?
It's definitely a possibility. Some theoretical physicists believe that highly advanced civilizations might be able to manipulate space-time for communication or travel. If the anomaly is some kind of interdimensional doorway or wormhole, as the book suggests, it could be a conduit for those kinds of interactions.
So we're back to the alien theory then. But this time, it's not just about little green men and flying saucers. We're talking about something far more complex and maybe even dangerous.
Right. The author doesn't shy away from exploring the potential consequences of contact with something so different from us. It raises some big questions about humanity's place in the universe and whether we're truly ready to face what might be out there.
It's definitely a thought-provoking concept.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond the typical sci-fi tropes of invasion or conquest.
Exactly. The book delves into the psychological and existential impact of encountering the truly unknown. It challenges our assumptions about reality and our place within it.
That's what I love about this deep dive. It's not just about the cool science or the spooky mysteries. It's about what it means to be human in a universe that's far more vast and mysterious than we can imagine.
You nailed it. And the ending of the book really drives that point home, without giving too much away. Dr. Orison's final confrontation with the anomaly leaves him fundamentally changed. He returns to the world, but he's no longer the same man. He carries the weight of his experience, the knowledge that something truly extraordinary exists beyond our comprehension.
It's a powerful and bittersweet ending. It makes you wonder if true knowledge comes at a cost and what we're willing to sacrifice in our pursuit of the unknown. As we wrap up this deep dive into Observatory X, I think it's safe to say that we've uncovered more questions than answers. But that's the beauty of exploring these topics. It sparks our curiosity, challenges our assumptions, and leaves us with a sense of wonder about the universe and our place within it. We've journeyed from the science of light pollution and infrared telescopes to the eerie possibilities of wormholes and extraterrestrial contact. And we've grappled with the idea that the pursuit of knowledge can sometimes lead us to unsettling truths. But perhaps the most important takeaway is this. The universe is full of mysteries, and it's up to us to explore them with open minds and a healthy dose of skepticism. So keep looking up, keep asking questions, and never lose that sense of awe and wonder that makes the universe such an incredible place to explore.